Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor at USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Yeah, Jason and I were talking about cooking bacon. And I mentioned to him that the way I cook bacon is I put it in a pot of water and I bring it, to a boil or almost to a boil. And that dissolves the sodium nitrate and nitrates. And the idea is water is a universal solvent. And because the cancer causing elements in sodium nitrate and nitrate get dissolved in the water, then I throw out the water. And I do it again. And then after I do that, then I put the bacon in a skillet and cook it. And I use a bacon press, which is a cast iron press to hold the bacon down. And it works great. But it doesn't taste anywhere near as good as the stuff you get at a restaurant because they leave all of that sodium in the bacon. However, the nitrates and nitrates are known carcinogens. So, and by the way, bacon, the animals don't come with that. If you have a hog processed, you grow a hog, they'll ask you, how do you want the bacon? Do you want it the regular way? And they with a gun and liquids, they inject the bacon so that it tastes the way you expect it to taste. Otherwise, it tastes lousy. Cathy's with us today. Welcome, Cathy.
Good morning, Vince. How are you doing today?
Really well. By the way, have you ever cooked bacon the way I just said that I do it? Boil it?
No, I haven't, but I probably should. I was just going to ask you if it curled up and how do you get it to lay flat, but you answered it with the press.
Well, it does curl up. It really does. And you know what? I'm at the point in my life where the way things look doesn't always matter as much as it used to. There were days where we'd have company and we want everything perfect and we want every speck of dust, vacuumed up. Now, there are dings in the walls from the dogs and, dogs will climb up on the door to tell us they want to go outside. And, sometimes there are dog prints on the doors. Sometimes there's scratches in the walls. And, years ago, I would touch that up with paint and, fix it up. And now I've got too many things to touch up, too many things to fix. The list is too long. And being a farmer, there's too many things. It's not like living in an apartment where that one little scratch on the wall, is visible all the time. I don't even see, most of the defects that we have because, frankly, I'm too busy doing other things. Has that happened to you, Cathy?
Yeah, Vince, I'm the same way. I'm not as much of my house doesn't look anywhere near what I'd like it to, but it's clean and it's functional. So there's too many things, especially this time of year, working in the garden and working outside. You got to get that stuff done, and this other stuff can wait till like a really rainy day or when winter comes again. So yeah, I don't fuss with it as much as I used to either.
Yeah,
I feel like if
go ahead.
I feel like if my friends come to the house or my family comes to the house, as long as things are neat and clean, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, I agree. I had a semi-personal question to ask you, and if you don't want to answer it, just say, I'm not going to tell you. But my question has to do with equipment. And so you live a preparedness lifestyle, and you have for quite a long time, and I have a feeling that it was instilled to you from your parents. I believe that and also your husband and et cetera, and those whom with you associate. So my question for you is, if you'd like to answer it, would you like to share with us what kinds of equipment you operate?
You mean as far as for me personally?
Yeah, I'm thinking
my husband too.
Well, okay, you and or your husband, and I'm thinking specifically you, like snow blowers, lawn mowers, riding lawn mowers, tractors, saws, manual transmission vehicles, manual transmission tractors, things like that the average apartment dweller would not operate.
Well, I do know how to drive a stick. When I was first married, my husband had a 72 Chevelle, all souped up, so I'm sure you know what those are all about.
Sure.
And he said, you need to learn how to drive a stick. I know, okay. So I was so nervous. I kept jerking it and letting the clutch out too fast. Well, finally, the ultimate test was we had a hill, and at the top of the hill was a stoplight. And he said, if you can go up that hill at a stoplight and you can get it to go, you pass the test. Otherwise, we have to keep doing this. So, of course, I did. And I was, like I said, I was so nervous. But I do know how to drive a stick. I use the weed whacker a lot. I don't use the lawnmower. I mean, I've done it a couple times, but that's kind of his thing. And I do the trimming and the weeding and the mulching and that, and anything, the limbs and all that. I can use a saw, and I do the snow blower once in a while. Now we do have a tractor. It's got a snow thrower on it. It's probably 4 or 5 foot wide. And he'll just, when it's wintertime, he'll just have it ready to go. He backs it into the barn, and then he can clear snow that way down the driveway. I'm trying to learn more and more, Vince. That's something that I've been thinking about more and more. First of all, because I'm about 8.5 years younger than my husband. So I think if he should happen to go, God forbid, before me, I have to know how to learn some of these things. So I've been trying to watch more and more of what he does. And I've even asked him if he'll write directions to everything down, just so that if I have to do it or he's not here, maybe he has to go out of town for some reason, I'll know how to do it. But in the house, I mean, I do everything as far as, the housework and the vacuuming and all that. So.
And that's wonderful. And by the way, I think the term when women do that, it's called nesting. When, they prepare to have a child, they want to make sure everything is ready and, before they have their child. Well, I've been doing the same thing that, you have been asking your husband to do. And that is, I've been writing instructions. I've been labeling things. I'm doing things that, I didn't used to do. For example, if I change the oil on one of our vehicles, I find a place under the hood near the oil filler cap, where I write down how many quarts of oil and what kind of oil I use in that vehicle. And, in the solar system, I write what each breaker is for. I've been labeling circuit breakers, even, I did it 15 years ago. I'm redoing them. I'm making sure it's absolutely clear. And if Mrs. Finelli or one of the boys is walking by and I think that they need a touch-up or a tune-up on what I think they need to know, I'll say, can you come on over here for just a second? I want to show you something. And I'll bring them over to the solar array or the solar panel or the distribution box, and I'll say, here's how I wired this. This is what these codes mean. Okay? These wires go here. This is the plus. This is the minus. Here's the fuses. Here are the circuit breakers. And everything is becoming labeled way more, definitively and more, with more detail than ever before. Because I want to make sure that if I'm not here, for whatever reason, physically, I've passed away, whatever it is, I want to make sure that the farm doesn't go into disarray, because there's nobody that is going to be able to walk in here and just fix everything. They just can't do it. It's too complex. And those are my feelings. And the reason I asked you about equipment, I was interested to know if you knew how to drive a stick shift. And I think that is absolutely critical to know how to drive a stick shift. Now, only 2% of vehicles today are sold with a manual transmission. Only 2%. Because most Americans don't know how to drive a stick shift. But what happens if you were in a situation where that were the only vehicle that there was? Or let's say there were no vehicles, but there was a tractor. You can be darn sure that that tractor has a manual transmission. And a tractor can get you from here to there if you know how to operate it. So that was why I was interested in the type of equipment that you have learned to use and use. I think it's great, absolutely great. And it's just the same.
Vince,
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead, Cathy.
I feel like, and you've been kind of the impetus for this. I have been listening and learning. It seems like every time my husband goes to do something, I'm looking over his shoulder saying, well, how did you do that? What tool did you use? Just yesterday, when we talked about faucets the last time we were on, and he took the aerator off all the faucets and soaked them in vinegar. Well, I know he's done this for a long time, but he takes a piece of duct tape and wraps them around, and then he uses the wrench so that he doesn't scratch all the coating off the aerator, or he scratches if it's stainless steel or something. So, I mean, I wouldn't have known that if I never would have watched my husband, that you wrap the duct tape around. Now, you might do something better or similar, Vince, but I've been just trying to watch him and learn, because I believe if I am all here by myself at some point, I'm going to need to know how to do this.
Okay, so that's a very good point. Duct tape, we probably would use electrical tape for that particular application, but here's why. Because electrical tape, we have a lot more of it. It's sold, if you buy it in bulk, 10 rolls to a package, if you will. And it's made in China, and it's roughly 35 to 50 cents a roll if you buy it in a 10 pack. So I would wrap those kinds of things with electrical tape, because we have electrical tape all over the house in rolls, in multiple drawers in the automotive shop we have. And the reason that I would use electrical tape is I would wrap it around a bunch of times, maybe 3 times, which might seem extravagant, but it's not extravagant when you consider that you could damage the finish on that aerator. So if I'm gluing, let's say a piece of furniture, let's say a spindle on a piece of furniture, I like to use electrical tape because it stretches. You can stretch it, and then it will pull tight. So if I want a really nice tight joint on a spindle of a chair that broke, in long ways, I would glue it with Elmer's carpenter's glue. I would glue both surfaces. First, I'd wet them, damp them, and then I would glue them, and I'd wipe off the excess glue with a small paper towel with some water on it, and then I would wrap it with electrical tape. So yes, we have duct tape, and we use duct tape for the critical applications where duct tape's more expensive, I think. But electrical tape, that's right. So, but what you've done is absolutely perfect, because the duct tape has fibers in it which will provide additional protection for the aerator, above and beyond what electrical tape would do. It absolutely will. So you're right. And your husband is right on the money, and he knows how to do a lot of things. But over the time we've been broadcasting, I've learned how sharp of a guy he really is. So you've got a great teacher there. Cathy and I will be right back. We're going to be talking about paint, windows, double hung, single hung, etc. Cathy's with us, and we're talking about home improvements today. Cathy, what's next?
Vince, I wanted to ask you, we started to talk about your bookcases, and I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about that. With the whole problem with the wood supply, first of all, did you get them finished?
Oh, no. I'm letting the wood acclimate to our house. And that's another way of saying I've got the backing, which is 4x8 sheets of 3/8 inch thick beaded plywood sitting on the living room floor because I can't get the other materials. What I'm looking for is 1x12 roof decking. And here in Missouri, we use 1x12 planks. pine number 4. So that would be the worst grade. And that's perfect for, bookshelves. It doesn't have to be clear. It doesn't have to be knot free. It doesn't have, it can have, little dings and dents, and I can tune that up. And I'd like to buy it for $4 for a 1x12, 8 feet long. But now it's, $23 if you can get it, but I can't get enough. I can get maybe 1 or 2, but I need, 11 pieces, and I can't find it. So I need 1x12, 8 feet long. I need 1x4, 8 feet long. I need 1x3, 8 feet long, and I need 1x2, 8 feet long. But no, I can't get any of those in the quantities necessary to make 2 simple bookcases. No, I can't. So I guess what I'm trying to tell Mrs. Finelli is, the wood is acclimating there in the living room floor, and it's probably going to be there a couple more months, until the supply eases up when I get the rest of the materials to finish the bookcase. So now it's at stop. I mean, the position is at stop. Nothing is. It's in park. The project is in park. Nothing's happening. And I call the local supplier, and he says no one around here has 1x12s because they're used for roof decking. It's not like everybody's trying to build a bookcase. It's just that it's used for roof decking. It's the best roof decking on the planet, as far as I can tell, if you can use wood. It's way better than plywood. Plywood sags, over time. OSB, oriented strand board, sags. I mean, if you look at new construction, you look at the roofing, and they put OSB on the roof, and you go, gosh, why are they doing that? And then a couple of years later, you see these dips in the roof between the trusses, because it can't sustain the weight of the shingles. And that's why these roofs dip. Now, those are my thoughts, Cathy.
So basically, you're just going to wait. It's more of a supply and demand issue.
That's right. Around here, it's a supply and demand issue. I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but, I don't want to take the truck and go 400 miles to see if I can find some, 1x12s. Now, if I wanted to buy the very best, and spend $40 a piece for a 1x12, 8 feet long, I could probably find those. But it's crazy to me to spend 10 times the price because I can't get the lower grade that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to wait it out. I'll just leave the books stacked up on the floor. I know Mrs. Finelli doesn't like it too much, and she hates it when I buy books because there's no room for them. We have these paths through the house, to get around the books. I have thousands of books, Cathy. I mean, maybe I have a disease. I have to ask Norm Shealy about this. I can't seem to, if I find books that are at a good price, I seem to buy them, whether they're on the internet or whether they're at estate sales or farm sales or the Goodwill. Seems like nobody wants to read anymore. And buying a book for $1 is unbelievable to me. When it used to cost $29 for the original book price, they sell them for $1. I don't understand it. I don't understand. And in England, there was a fuel shortage several years ago, and people were burning furniture, to stay warm. They were burning books because you could buy books. The BTUs in $1 worth of books was more than any other expenditure for BTUs per unit of money. So people would buy books and then burn them to stay warm. I mean, it's crazy to me. Anyway, we'll be right back. Cathy's with us, and we're going to be talking about painting and windows, and I'm sure she's got a bunch of tips about painting. I'm sure of it. We'll be right back, class. This is USA Prepares. I'm Vin Finelli. Cathy's with us. She's in Ohio, and she had some questions about my attempt at trying to build a couple bookcases for some books that we have lying all over the house here at the farm. And Cathy, did you have any comments based on what I said, or do you have any of your own comments?
Well, Vince, you were talking about books, and I'm the same way. I have them. They're in the bedroom, they're in the sewing room, they're in the basement. I have a bookshelf. I just love good books. But we have a thrift store, and it's run by a church. And they have paperback books in there for a dime. Any paperback. And they have hardcover for 50 cents. Boy, do they have some wonderful books in there. Gardening and history. I mean, there are cookbooks. There's some really nice books in there. And it's rural, so you get more of that than you do, just maybe fiction or things like that. There is some of that there, but there's a lot of good how-to books out there.
I was reading an article, and it stunned me. If you look at Harry and Meghan, and some of the images of them, they have some books behind them. And obviously people are interested in, what are they reading? What kind of books do these people read? Well, the article that I was reading talked about this company that sells books based on the subject by the foot. So here's what happens. So I'm not saying that Harry and Meghan have done this, but maybe they have. But people who are interested in social media, who want to impress other people by what they read, because you have the phone camera facing them. So right behind them is their bookcase. And they have, this company sells books by the subject, by the foot. So if you want to impress people that you are an astronomer, you can buy a foot of astronomy books. And they'll send you a foot long selection. And you can put that, or you can buy 2 feet or 4 feet or however many feet you want. They'll send them to you because this company has figured out that no one really reads, but people want to impress people. So they sell books by the foot, by the subject. Is that unbelievable or what? I've never heard of anything like that until I read that article. I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's a brilliant way to sell books, but are people going to read them? Probably not. Is that stunning or what?
Yeah, I've never heard of that either, Ben.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when I buy books, I don't like spending full price, and I won't even do that. The only time I did that was when I was a student, and I had to buy books, and there's like only a few places to get them back in the early 70s. But as far as books, in the good old days when I would go to a thrift store, I would look through the books and I would pick out the ones that I was interested in, and I'd buy them. Like I found at Goodwill a set of books by Isaac Asimov, the physicist, and he was my teacher, and I didn't know about these, so I bought these books. They were written in 1950s, 1960s. So I bought them, and that's $2 for 4 books. Nobody wanted them. I guess the words were too big. Unbelievable. Sometimes you have to, when you read, you have to have 2 books. One will be a dictionary, and the other would be the book you're trying to read. But that's the hard way of doing it. But what it does is it increases your vocabulary. So those are my thoughts on books for the moment, Cathy.
Well, do you want to talk about paint, Vince?
I'd love to. I'll bet you have a lot of tips about painting. I'd love to hear them.
Well, I'm no expert, and we've painted here and other places, but my first suggestion to anybody is buy good paint. Just buy good paint. And one of the reasons why I say this is when I was pregnant with my second child, we sold our house right away, and we had a house that was sort of under construction. And we had a limited time to get in, and I was like 7 or 8 months pregnant, so it was like, okay, they painted it. That was part of the deal. The paint was awful. You couldn't touch it. You couldn't touch it up. You couldn't wash it. I don't know what they did. I don't know if they watered it down. I don't know if they bought the cheapest paint they could find. We ended up repainting the whole house probably within the next year or two because it was awful. And then the second time we had a house built, we got a young man, and he actually was a good painter. He did a beautiful job. Well, he quoted us a price, and it was the same situation where we were at a time that neither one of us could have painted the house, plus you needed scaffolding and all that at that house. So he quoted us a price, and we said we wanted Benjamin Moore paint. He said, okay. So we go in, we went in almost every day to check. So we go in and he's painting, and I look down on the side of the big bucket that he's got. It said Sherwin-Williams. And I said, wait a minute. We wanted Benjamin Moore. He goes, well, you know, I quoted you and the price went up and I couldn't afford it. We were furious because although the paint was better than the first house we had, we still had part of the same problem, that you really couldn't wash it that well. And there were some rooms that were used a lot, like the kitchens and the bathroom. We ended up repainting those. And my personal favorite is I like to have a finish that I can wash. Now, I've had some of the people at the store tell me, oh, no, you know, this is a flat finish and you can wash it. Well, that didn't happen to me with a couple different situations. So I get one that has just a real low sheen. You really don't see it. It's not shiny or anything, but I can wash it. And we painted, when we moved in this house, we painted every square inch of it. Ceilings, the walls, and we bought Benjamin Moore, and we're happy. I can wash it. I can touch it up. It blends. If you're going to spend the time and the money, I would say just buy good paint and paint that you can wash it off. And, you know, I know Benjamin Moore is a good company, and there might be other ones that are just as good, but I don't know about them, Vince. So that's my first tip, is to just, you know, if you can do it yourself, because you're probably going to do a better job, unless you know the person has a really good reputation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are several types of paint finish. There is there's flat, which is what most walls in most homes are painted with, and then there is an eggshell finish, and then there is a satin finish, and then there's a semi-gloss, and then there's a gloss, high gloss, and they get shinier and shinier and shinier, to the point where the high gloss might be what a refrigerator might be painted, you know, in the old days when they used to paint refrigerators. And cars would be a high gloss paint. But I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. The flat paint is something that you would put in living rooms, bedrooms. You'd put that on ceilings. The eggshell is great for kitchens and foyers and on trim. And sometimes in our house we've used a satin finish on our trim, and we use a flat finish on the walls. But you're right; it's really difficult to wash a lot of cheap paint. And Benjamin Moore has got a first-class reputation. It really does. When I was remodeling rental homes, I had a contractor's price with Glidden, and I used to buy Glidden's paint, and they had like a commercial paint for guys that renovated houses and put tenants in them. And it was inexpensive. It was the 5-gallon buckets. And the reason was because the tenants were going to destroy them. You'd destroy the houses anyway. So nobody was going to wash the walls. They're just going to repaint over it. So that's why I use that. But, you know, in our home here, where we're very careful with, not nicking and marking up the walls, we use a really good quality paint. So you're absolutely right. And by the way, class, you need to shake that paint really, really well before you use it. So, you know, if you're gonna use it today, you need to have it shaken today, and then you need to stir it. And when you buy paint, they will typically give you a paint stir, whether it's a 5-gallon bucket with a really long wooden stir, or the gallon size. So stir it, and make sure you get the pigments and the solids up off the bottom, because they sink to the bottom. Very good points, Cathy. And you know, here's an example. When we built our house, there was a paint that Walmart sold called Color Place, and I believe it was excellent. But it changed. And over the years, I found that the color that we painted our trim kind of a gray color. And now it's a different color, a completely different color. It's kind of it faded in the sun, but now it's tan. It's not gray anymore, it's tan. So we've got to repaint all the trim on our house, and that requires scaffolding. It requires getting up on the roof. It requires me putting Mrs. Finelli in a front-end loader and raising her up. I mean, she would rather be on the roof or in a bucket on a tractor than being the operator of the tractor. So that's okay with me. I'm all for it. But you're absolutely right. And reds, I've noticed that the red paints discolor the fastest. Have you seen the same thing?
Well, Vince, I've never painted anything red. I do know if you paint a wall like brick red, like they do, or the dark brown, you're going to have to put primer and several coats on to cover that because it'll bleed through. So if you want to,
now we don't paint our house. Yeah, we don't paint our house or anything in the house red. But what I'm talking about is we bought an old cattle trailer, and it was painted red. And we have an old utility trailer, and it came from the factory red. And we have an international tractor, and it was painted red. And what I'm saying is that those colors, because I know that even International Harvester's red, and that's a top-of-the-line farm tractor company, or it was when it was still in business, they didn't skip on the paint. And even their paint fades. So red is, and if you have a car and you have if you have some body work done on a car, red is tough, really tough to match. And if you look at red cars going down the road and they've had body work, you'll see what I'm talking about. Maybe the paint matches for the first, year, but after that, it seems to not match anymore. Those are my thoughts on red.
Well, Vince, one of the things that we do, and you mentioned shaking the paint up, when we get the paint, like they shake it up for you at the store sometimes, and if you're going to go right home and use it, what we did is we saved like ketchup bottles, like a small plastic ketchup bottle, and we put the major colors that we use, like whatever the tan was we used, and we labeled it. That way, if we have a touch-up, we just have a small bottle of it, we shake it up real good, and we can go and just touch little places up, and we just label it.
What a great idea. And there's less air in a ketchup bottle for the paint to go bad. We'll be right back. Cathy's with us, and we're talking about paint. And so, Cathy, when you buy paint in 5-gallon buckets, and I assume you do, right? How do you guys shake them after, you get them home and you don't use it that day or the next day or the next day? Do you have a secret for shaking them?
Well, my husband's got a thing on his drill. It's a paint stirrer. Mm-hmm. And he puts it, you attach it in there, and it kind of looks like a honeycomb kind of it's got like open, like a whisk kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And he does that. Now, if it's something that I don't think you can shake it as well if it's a 5-gallon bucket, you're not going to pick it up and shake it. But a can, you might be able to shake it for a few minutes and with a paint stirrer. But I use that, and I also use that attachment when I make my homemade laundry soap because I have to break it up. So I use that attachment on with his drill.
Yeah, and they sell attachments for the 5-gallon buckets, and they have them to fit the 3/8 inch drive drill and a 3/8 inch chuck, and also the 1/2 inch. So there's like a heavy duty version, and there's a standard duty version for the 5-gallon buckets, and they have a much smaller one that will fit a 1/4 inch drill, believe it or not, for the 1-gallon cans. What I do, Cathy, is if I'm going to paint, and it's a nice warm day, I'll put the paint can out in the sun, and if it's a 5-gallon bucket, and let it warm up. And then I take it for a ride. I'll put it in the back of I've got a milk crate on the back of a 4-wheeler, and I'll take it for a ride. and just the bouncing and the sloshing around is a good start for mixing up the paint. Then I'll use that drill attachment to mix it up the rest of the way. When you paint out of a 1-gallon paint can, do you punch holes with nails around the rim of the inside so that if paint, as you dip the paintbrush in there, if paint gets in the sealing part of the rim, that it drips back down into the can. Do you ever do that?
No, Vince, I never heard of that. I a lot of times what I do, especially if I'm doing trim, I'll just dig out those little paint cups and I pour it in there. But you're right, you get all kinds of that dried up paint in there. That's a wonderful idea.
So what I'm talking about, class, is you take a regular, let's say a 6-penny nail or an 8-penny nail, and in the lowest point of the metal rim, after you take the lid off, the lowest point where the paint would collect, if you get it in the rim, if you put a few holes in there, it will drip back down. And then before you seal up the paint, put the lid back on when you're done, what you do is you take that paintbrush and you wipe any of excess paint that you can out of that rim before you put the lid back on. And then when you put the lid on, you put a paper towel or a rag that you don't mind getting full of paint over the entire lid of the can, and then you tap gently with a hammer so you don't nick the lid. And the reason you put the towel over that, or the paper towel, is so that the paint doesn't spatter up and on you and on the walls, on your shirt and pants and etc. It goes onto the paper towel. So those are a couple of things that we do. Cathy, do you ever put your paint rollers or your paint brushes, do you have a method of storing them for reuse later without cleaning them?
Yes, I put them in a big plastic bag. And if if I can fit it in like a Ziploc bag or a nice heavy duty plastic bag, I put them in the refrigerator. And then I take them out and use them if you're not done with the project.
Yeah. And that class, it's a great way to go. So what we do is, Cathy has mentioned that she has this big roll of plastic film. You might call it saran wrap. But Sam's Club, I guess Costco sell it, and it's the size restaurants might use. And so we've had that for many years. And probably last 10 years if you use it in a regular basis. It's that big of a roll. And what I do is I take a paintbrush that, whether it be oil-based or latex. Now, typically latex, I'm going to wash that in the kitchen sink right away. But if it's an oil-based paint, it's a pain in the neck to clean those brushes. And I need to be careful how I say this. If it's an expensive brush, like a $30, $40, $50 brush, I am going to clean it. But if it's what I call a chip brush, and this is what a machinist might use, and you can get those at the Chinese factory tool outlet. You can buy a box of 30, 40, 50 of them for $10. And they might be 1 inch wide. And we use them a lot here at our machinery shop, in our automotive shop. So if we need to clean parts, in our parts washer, we might use them. Or if we're going to paint Rust-Oleum primer on a wheel that needs to be fixed because it's rusted, we'll use one of these chip brushes with Rust-Oleum paint. But that Rust-Oleum paint is oil-based. So we'll use it, and then we'll wrap that paintbrush in saran wrap, if you will, tightly, put it in another bag, and put it in the freezer. And then we can take it out in a few weeks, and it's good to go. So without cleaning it. So those are a couple thoughts about paintbrushes and cleaning. And let's talk a little bit more. And you can do that with rollers too. You can do it with water-based and oil-based paints. But water-based, we like to clean them right away. And I'll tell you how we do it when we come back. We're talking about home improvements. We're talking about paint. So I went out into the garage during the break, and I see we have 4 5-gallon buckets left of paint that we're going to use for the living room. Now, after 16 years, the living room the spackling is not finished, and the walls have not been painted. But I think we have enough paint for that. 4 5-gallon buckets ought to do it. And the reason I bought a lot of paint when we started building this house, and the reason I bought it was on sale, and I wanted it to all be the same lot. Okay, because all of the rooms in this house are painted the same color except for just a couple. And they are kind of an eggshell color. It's kind of an off-white. It's not, the ceilings are all the same color. That's ceiling white. And by the way, ceiling white paint is exactly the same color as the spackle when it dries. So the reason that builders like to use ceiling white is because they don't have to be as careful. As a matter of fact, if you texture the ceiling, the whole ceiling, you don't have to paint it at all, because I found a house that we bought, and it was by the best builder around, and I thought the ceiling had been painted. I went to wash a little spot on the ceiling, and it had never been painted in the first place. So ceiling white and spackle are the same color, but you do want to paint. And the reason you want to paint is you want to prevent the moisture in the living quarters from going in the walls. Okay? Because ultimately it could cause damage if your house is really, really humid on the inside. So that's not the case in ours. And I'm looking forward to, this summer getting on the scaffolding and finishing the spackle in our living room. It takes 3 sets of scaffolding, 3 sets vertically, to reach the peaks. Actually, I have to put a ladder on top of that to get to the highest part of the ceiling in the living room. And it's going to be a job, and I'm not looking forward to it. But I want to get it done before I'm, at a point where I'm too old to even consider spackling and painting that room. But we've used Olympic and we've used Valspar paints, and we're okay with both of those as well as Benjamin Moore. Your thoughts? Have you ever used Valspar or Olympic?
Boy, Vincent, I think we've used the Valspar in one of our houses, but I don't think the builders use that. It seems like most of them want to use either a real cheap paint, or I see a lot of them use Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah, and Sherwin-Williams sells spackle, and they sell all the wall covering materials, liquid wall covering materials. And you're right, they have accounts and they buy it in bulk. And I don't know, I've never really used Sherwin-Williams. Around here they don't even call it Sherwin-Williams, they call it Sherman-Williams. But it's Sherwin-Williams. Do you have any other thoughts about painting that you want to share?
Well, yeah, this one you probably can't help me with, but I don't know how I do it, but I get paint all over me. It's on my hands. I get it on my clothes. It's in my hair. I'm careful, but I don't know what I do, but I seem to be the messiest painter between me and my husband, and if we have family or friends help us.
Well, Mrs. Finelli, I think, and you went to the same school of painting, and she gets it all over her. And we have some shirts. When I used to have a job back in the 80s, white shirts. I would wear a white shirt, and so she has one of those that she uses just for painting, and it's got I don't know, 20 years worth, 30 years worth of paint on this particular white shirt that she wears, and that protects her from getting it on her arms and so forth. She wears blue jeans, and it's all over the blue jeans as well. But what I do is I never fill the paintbrush bristles. I just dip the tip, like maybe 1/8 deep, and ultimately it works higher and higher up the bristles of the brush. But I don't soak the brush with paint, and that way it doesn't get on my hands. And the other thing I wanted to mention, how I clean brushes. I'd like to hear from you. How do you clean brushes? Latex paint, water-based paint. Do you have a preferred method?
Vince, I think we just run them in soapy water or soak them a little bit, and then just run them, and it take I don't know if we have like a bristle brush. My husband normally does most of that. He seems to get it out, but I know you have to get all the paint out, or it just gets hard and it's difficult to paint with after that. That's right. I probably don't have the best method, Vince.
What I do is I take a clean sink, like a kitchen sink, and nothing else in the kitchen sink, and it's been washed out. And I will put the brush in there, and I'll run some warm water on the brush. And then I will brush the bottom of the sink, the base of the sink with that brush in the water until I get most of the paint out. Then I use a kitchen fork, a stainless steel fork, and I will put some like Dawn or Palmolive dishwashing liquid on the bristles, and I'll use the fork and run the fork through the bristles, going the same direction as the bristles go. And I keep repeating that, and that cleans out in between the bristles, and it works really, really well. Then when I'm done, and I think I've gotten all the paint out, I'll go outside, take that brush, and I will shake it to fling the water off it. And then I'll hang it on the clothesline, and I'll hang it with the bristles pointing down. But I will shape those bristles so that they don't fan outward. It's kind of like combing hair. I want to comb those bristles so that they don't fan outward. And then I let it dry in the sun, and it works great. So we have paint brushes here that I've inherited from my father when he built his first house around 1950. So we have paint brushes, and they were good quality brushes back then, and they were expensive back then. So there's 70, some of the brushes that we have are 70, 60, 50 years old. And if you take care of them, they will last a very, very long time. And so that's what we do. And immediately upon finishing that use of the paintbrush, if it's a latex, it's going to be washed immediately. If it's a good quality paintbrush and we're using oil-based paints and we don't want to throw that brush away, then we are going to clean that with a fork, kitchen-type fork, and solvent. So that's what we do. But, most people don't want to use oil-based paints anymore because the cleanup is awful. And, you can't clean it up with water. And, of course, we use drop cloths. Now, a drop cloth is not a tarp. And a tarp is not a good idea to use as a drop cloth. And the reason that you want to use a canvas-type drop cloth is because when you drop paint on a drop cloth, it gets absorbed and it doesn't travel very far. And it dries very quickly compared to a tarp. If you have one of those Harbor Freight blue tarps and you use that as a drop cloth, what happens is the paint doesn't dry very quickly, and as you walk across the tarp, you get the paint on your shoes, and then it travels. It travels farther. So we don't use tarps as drop cloths. We use drop cloths as drop cloths. Now what you can do is if you have an old sheet, you can use that. It's not good because sheets are generally a blend of cotton plus, polyester or something like that. And the cotton is is really good for the drop cloth. The polyester is not so good, so the paint will not dry as quickly on a sheet. But you certainly can use that. And then when you're done, don't throw it away. Let the paint dry out and then save it for the next use. And that's what we do. We have drop cloths that have been around here since the 1980s. They keep getting moved from house to house to house as we travel. So those are a couple of my thoughts. Cathy, do you have any suggestions that you want to add?
Vince, the only other thing I wanted to mention was, first of all, that was a great idea on the canvas drop cloth. I don't have any of those, but next time we paint, that's what I'm going to use. Vince, the other thing I wanted to mention is before we paint, we clean everything. I wash the walls down. I clean all the cobwebs. I clean the wood. We clean the trim. We mask it, dry it. We mask it off with either that blue tape, or you can use certain kind of like the even a masking tape, as long as it's not, you don't leave it on there forever. But I clean everything real good. I wash the walls and the ceilings if I can. If I can, with the ceilings, I at least dust them real good, or take a vacuum and, try to get all the cobwebs. You just don't want to be painting dirt, and you don't want to, like, if you've got a bump in the wall, like, I wanted to ask you, Vince, a lot of times you get those nail pops where they pop out in the wall. How do you correct yours?
Well, the only way I know of correcting nail pops from sheetrock is to hit them back in and then spackle over them. But to prevent that in this house, you can prevent a lot of that. And what we did was we glued and screwed most of our sheetrock down. What that means is we used a wallboard type adhesive on the studs. And we applied that to the studs. Then we put the sheetrock on the studs. Then we screwed the sheetrock to the studs. So it's really bonded, and I don't think we have any nail pops, or, maybe screw pops, but we don't have any of that. But most houses do. And that comes from the flexing of the studs, the flexing of the joists, the flexing of the framing and the movement, and not spackling well. So the only way that I can think of to fix that is to hit them back in, and then respackle them. And sometimes you have to dig out the original spackle, but sheetrockers are in a hurry. They really are, and they don't necessarily make sure that the substrate or the framing material is flat when they put the sheetrock on. So there are voids between the sheetrock and the studs. So if that's the case, there's going to be movement there, and you're going to have nail pops. I mean, that's just the way it is. And most of them happen in the ceilings because people walking on the second floor deflect the framing, the ceiling joist, the floor joist, and that causes the ceiling sheetrock to have those nail pops. But most houses have nail pops. They really do. And it takes a lot longer to screw sheetrock on than it does to nail it on. Nail it, boom, 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 done. Sheetrock, screwing it on, probably takes 5 times longer, maybe 10 times longer per screw versus per nail. And the guys that do the sheetrock work keep the nails in their mouth, which is crazy. And, they're in a big hurry, and they miss a lot of times. So a lot of times those nails don't go squarely into the 2x4s or the 2x6s or the 2x8s or 12s, whatever it happens to be. They go in sideways, and they don't hold very well, or they break the paper too much, and that causes the sheetrock to be weak. Cathy, do you have any suggestions for cleaning rollers, or do you do the same thing? Put the rollers, wrap it in like a saran wrap, putting it in a Ziploc bag, and put it in the refrigerator or freezer, between uses?
That's what we do. And I don't know, Vince, I can't remember whether we clean them or whether it's just so much. I think we do, but if it seems like we can't get all the paint out, we might just buy new. It's been a few years since we did it here, so.
Yeah, I try to clean ours. Almost all the time I try to clean them. And I've probably got 20 different rollers here in different textures over the years. And you can clean them. But if you're going to paint, let's say, a room, and you think it's going to be spread over a week, just 1 week, you can wrap that roller in. You take the roller off of the roller handle and just put the roller cover in saran wrap. You might want to put a couple drops of water on it to keep it moist. Put it in the freezer or refrigerator, and it will keep. And that prevents the paint from getting hard, and it works really well. But I have a suggestion for the roller handles, if you will. Don't buy the cheap ones, the real thin ones that flex. Buy the kind that the painters use. And if you buy one of them, it's going to cost twice as much, maybe 3 times as much. I don't know what they cost now, but these cost about $3. So my prices are, prior to the hyperinflation that we've had. So I don't know what the current price is. But I do know that if you clean them very carefully, and you clean the roller ends, and you clean the metal and the handles, you can keep them for 30 years, because that's how long, maybe more. I've got some from, probably 35 years old, maybe 40 years old, and they work just great. And then we have those extension handles. They're like broomsticks, if you will, but they're expandable. Now, you can buy the cheap ones at the Chinese factory outlet, thin, and that's okay. Or you can buy the heavy-duty fiberglass ones, and we have both. And I like the heavy-duty fiberglass ones that are expandable. So they start at about 4 feet long, and you can make them maybe 7 feet long. They're kind of a twist, kind of a lock, expanded pull, and they work really, really well. But after you paint, you want to get the paint off there so that you can collapse it again. So what we're talking about is taking care of your tools. Cathy, have you ever used one of those expanded roller handles?
Mm-hmm.
Or roller poles?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And they work great, right? It saves the back. And so here's a question, and I don't know the answer to this. Do you do the corners first, or do you touch up the corners later? With a brush, if you're using a roller.
I think I do the corners first, and then I get as close as I can without touching the ceiling. And then if I have to go back, then I touch up.
Yeah. That's what we do. We do actually do it both ways. But the idea with the roller is you can leave that kind of a orange skin texture, I think it's called orange peel texture, with the roller. And I'm not talking about really bumpy. I'm just talking about just the most minute texture of the paint on the wall. And I kind of like that compared to the brush strokes. So what we do is we try to cover as much as we can with the roller, and then we touch up. Now sometimes the end of the roller will leave a streak in the corner where two walls join or where the walls join the ceiling. And so if you have a brush at the ready, you can brush that. It's not like a drip, but it's like a heavy application in a line from the end of the roller. So you can touch that up immediately if you have a brush. And that's what we do. But painting is not one of my favorite things. Spackle is even less favorite of the things I like to do. But, we do it anyway. So the job is a laborious kind of job. At least for us it is, because there's so many square feet of it. I think we have roughly 8 5-gallon buckets left for the rest of the house. And one of the strategies that we used, Cathy, is we wanted to paint all the rooms the same color. That way the touch-up paint would be the same for a whole bunch of rooms rather than, a different color for each room. But all the ceilings are ceiling white. Have you used that same strategy, or do you have different colors?
We have mostly the same colors, but I have a couple different colors in the same color palette just for accent. Yes,
and we've done the same thing. I just wanted to mention that tomorrow, hour number 1, it looks like it's just going to be me for the first hour with tips from the book. So if you'd like to give us a call and weigh in with some tips that you have, that number is 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And hour 2 will be with Bert, and we'll be talking about science. Cathy, I just wanted to mention ceilings. Do you paint your ceilings all the same color?
Yeah, that's ceiling white.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the reason I ask is, it's if you have multiple rooms in the house and you standardize on ceiling white, if you have some left over, you can use it for touching up. If you need to buy some more, they are able to you're able to just buy it right off the shelf and pretty much have it match because it's pre-mixed at the factory. Ceiling white makes the room, it reflects the light the best, in my opinion. Overall, it's the best for reflecting light and making the room look, brighter. And that reduces your overall electricity cost for lighting. Because that ceiling's probably in our case, ceilings don't get painted very often. Maybe every 20 years, something like that, maybe. And we paint our house with whites, or a shade of, from white. And the reason that we do that is it is to me, it's a nicer, clean look, and it's a traditional look, and it makes the rooms look bigger. That's why decorators and realtors say, if you're going to paint before you sell the place, paint with white because it makes the rooms look bigger. Cathy, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I was in a house recently where the bedroom was like a dark blue, and they painted the ceiling dark blue. It just felt like a small box. It really, really made it look a lot smaller. And so then they painted the ceiling white, and then the walls were like a light gray. So it totally changed the room. And I was going to bring that up too, Vince. Like, they make the little containers that you can buy. They're like, I don't know, they almost look like a third of a gallon, and you can paint your wall before you buy the paint. And I've always found it difficult to pick a color off the paint sample. To me, I always feel like when I pick it off of there, it looks darker when it's on the wall. So let's say you were going to go with a tan or a gray or something. Put that on the wall and maybe live with it for a few days, because it depends on how much shadowing you get in your house, and do you have a lot of trees overhanging, and it might be just the wrong shade for you. So I would buy one of those samples and live with it, even if you had to buy a gallon, and just do areas on maybe different walls, just to see if you like the color, so you don't go through all that work. And I had a house probably 15 years ago, and I wanted a real light, like a yellow, just a real soft yellow in the one room. And when they got it on the wall, it was like a gold, and I never liked that color. I was so sorry that I didn't take the time and put that color up there and see what it looked like once it dried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And have you standardized on one color for your wood trim? What I'm talking about, the trim around the windows, the baseboard, the trim around the doors, etc. Is there one color that you've standardized on for your trim in your house, or do you have multiple colors?
No, it's all the same. All the doors, the trim, everything is all the same.
Mm-hmm. May I ask what color? May I ask what color you standardized on?
Well, Vince, I don't know. We bought the house used. I mean, it's a well-built home. It was built by Mennonites, the structure. I don't think they did all the inside work. I think they just did the framework. But it's sort of like it's a medium brown color, and it has more of a little bit of like like a red tone to it, almost, just a slight red tone. So I don't know if it's like a cherry kind of a look, but not quite as dark as that.
Okay. Very good. We painted all ours just plain white. Now, we used to paint the walls white and the trim antique white, which would be a kind of just a light hint, just a hint of yellow or tan, just a hint. And then we decided that we like the white trim and maybe eggshell color walls for most of the house, except there are a couple rooms that have a slight hint of a green, tan color. And I wasn't used to that, but Mrs. Finelli wanted to do it, so there are a couple of rooms in the house that have that, and they're smaller rooms, and it's great. It's great to have those accents, but the ceilings are still white, and we don't have we have all vaulted ceilings, so the ceilings in most rooms are at an angle, and so there's a lot of reflective ceiling, and they are the ceiling white, and it works great for us. Cathy, did you want anything else you want to talk about paint, or did you want to get into another topic?
I'd like to get into another topic, Vince, but I have one last question for you.
Sure.
You said you bought the 5-gallon buckets, and you said you bought them 15, 16 years ago.
Uh-huh.
How long does the paint last?
I don't know, because it's still good.
Wow.
But yeah. Now, if you open it up, you might see that there's a hint of mold on the top of the paint if you don't shake it. So I just shake it up. I put it in a four-wheeler and I take it for a ride, or I strap it into the back of in the corner of the pickup truck in the back corner, and I take it for a ride. Literally, stop, start, down the bumpy road, and by the time I'm done, it's almost at the point where I could use it. And then I take that paint stir on the drill and I finish it. But yeah, it's still good. Now, I saw my dad do something back in the 1950s, and this is when they had oil-based paints. And oil-based paints, if you put the lid back on, they didn't store too well. And he would take a screen, like a window screen, and he would pour the paint through the window screen several times. And he'd take the clumps out, that would not redissolve. And then he would use that paint because, frankly, paint is darn expensive. And I think, if I remember correctly, last time I was at one of those big box stores like Home Depot or one of those places, their top quality paint was getting, nudging up against $50 a gallon. Is that right, Cathy?
Yeah. Oh, I think that's what we paid for a Benjamin Moore. But Vince, maybe the other thing you could do is that I have a strainer. It's a metal strainer, and it's probably a good 8 inches across, 6 inches across. You could probably just designate one of those for pouring it in and getting out the clump.
Absolutely. And that's what my dad did with the screen. He taught chemistry, and he formed, a piece of used window screen, because we didn't throw anything out in our family. So a piece of used window screen that, had a few holes in it, no problem. We just keep that, roll it up and keep it. And then he would put a couple layers together to screen the paint. That way one hole would be blocked by the next layer of screen, that kind of a thing. And he'd form a cone with it, and then he would use a paint stir to force the paint through the screen. And it worked great. And by the way, Cathy, I want to mention I thin out the paint that I use. I don't know if it's recommended, but I would rather apply multiple thin coats rather than one thick coat. And I've never seen paint ever that I've bought that says it covers 400 square feet per gallon. No way. No way does the paint. No, two things. One coat covers all. No, one coat doesn't cover, and it doesn't cover 400 square feet per gallon. Those are two things that I think are universally true with regard to paint. Have you found the same thing?
Yep, same thing. Yep.
Yeah. So what I do is I use, like filtered water, ProPure water. You can use Berkey water, and I thin out the paint, and it works better. That's the first. By the way, we use primer. We use wallboard primer for new surfaces, and that really works well. So the primer adheres to the wallboard and the spackle, and then the paint adheres really well to the primer, because regular paint without primer mixed in does not adhere as well. And so we go through the extra effort of using primer, and then we paint. Now, I understand that there's paint with primer mixed in. I don't know. I just do it the old-fashioned way because it's tried and true and it works great. What else did you want to talk about?
Well, Vince, I wanted to ask you something. I was listening to you. I don't know if it was a week or two ago. You were talking to Dr. Sheely, and you were talking about using the castor oil in your eyes, which I have done.
Uh-huh.
And I've also been doing it for my dog. I know that Dr. Sheely mentioned it, or you mentioned it. Do you remember how many days that was?
How many days we do it?
Yeah, in a row. It's supposed to help if they have a cataract. It's supposed to help resolve it.
Dr. Sheely's been mentioning a month, but I noticed the difference with me in one day. I mean, the biggest difference to me was the first day. So at night, before sleep, one drop in each eye. And you really worry about this. You're going to wake up and you're going to be able to see. And it's really disconcerting. No question about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Next morning, I looked around. I thought, I can see better. And then, so let's say there's an improvement on a scale of 1 to 10. First day improvement would be a 10. Second day might be a 6. And the subsequent days might be a 3, 4, 2, 1. Okay. So you don't get the dramatic improvement, at least in my case, as much of an improvement the second day and the third day and the fourth day and the fifth day as you get, the first day. So, 30 days, I believe, is what Dr. Sheely talks about. But I do it all the time. So, if I decide I'm going to relax and use the pulsed electromagnetic, frequency device, which I use every day, I have a bottle of, castor oil USP. It's just for me, and it's clean, it's sterilized, and I don't let the dropper touch my eyelashes. And I lie down, and I look up, and I get the inside corner of each eye with just one drop. Then I look around like I'm really concerned. I'm looking all over, and it spreads the castor oil. And then I kind of close my eyes, or sometimes I'll just watch the screen. I'll watch the Rockford Files, or I'll watch Combat, or I'll watch the Twilight Zone, or I'll watch The Outer Limits, or I'll watch a historical documentary, something like that, with blurry with this stuff in my eyes. But it seems to work the best overnight because your eyes stay closed most of the night as compared to trying to watch TV, with these drops in. But I absolutely believe it works, and I've used it on my dogs, but unfortunately one of the dogs didn't live long enough for me to see results. But the next dog, her sister is getting those treatments, and I think she's doing better. I really do. So that's my take. Oh, by the way, I got an email, and I probably should read this, from Amit, one of our students. And so let me just read this. I heard both hours in the archive, and you noted in your discussion with Dr. Shuley about radiation exposure at cruising altitudes of airliners. And it goes on to say that a radiologist relative told him that ultraviolet radiation for the pilots in the front was so high that pilots as young as in their 40s were found to develop cataracts. So ultraviolet is kind of dangerous. So if you're concerned, you might want to call in and ask Dr. Shuley about using castor oil drops in your eye, and it must be USB, U.S. Pharmacopoeia, to dissolve those cataracts. Do I think it works? Absolutely. Absolutely, because I've done it for me. Class, I'm going to tell you what I did, and it's a kiss of death, literally. During this broadcast, I heard a commercial that I was not very pleased with. So I sent an email, and I'm going to read the email I sent. I sent it to the CEO of the company. And I'm going to read it to you. I'm not going to give you his first name because I've talked to this person. And it says, quote, I just sent this during the broadcast with Cathy. Quote, this is from me. Quote, I hear your commercials on GCN about your blank product, specifically on our broadcast class, USA Prepares. Do you think the words, and I have one in quote that they used, and another word they used in quotes, that you use in your commercials enhance your radio image? Thank you, Vincent. So I just asked the question. Do you think this enhances your image? Now, this is the kiss of death, because criticizing commercials gets you thrown off the air. Now, how do I know that? Because I have a degree in that. I've been thrown off the air for criticizing commercials. I just got an email back. This is like within 30 minutes. And it says, it's to GCN. And it was copied me. Can you, quote, can you take this commercial out of rotation? Thank you. And it's signed by the people at the company that have this commercial. So what I was trying to say is I thought it was, not enhancing their image. And they were talking about a testimonial that they had about. So some guy who used their product, used language that I thought is offensive. And I told him. And you know what? They're taking the commercial off the air. So we didn't get taken off the air yet, but the commercial's being taken off the air. What do you think about that, Cathy?
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Well, let me ask you this, Cathy. Since we might get thrown off the air, let's get thrown off together if we're going to do it. Did you find it as offensive as I did? I mean, it's acceptable language today, but to me, I don't like it.
It just doesn't. It could be worded better. It just doesn't seem appropriate to say that. I mean, that's
correct.
That's like two high school kids talking, out in the yard or something. But I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
So did you have, we've never talked about this. Have you had that, did you have that same kind of reaction that I had?
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought was, Vince isn't going to like this one. Just because of the wording.
Well, there's an old saying that I remember teaching in my class, and that is, when one company says to its employees, look, at a pep talk, we're no worse than anybody else. That's not the image I would want to leave with my employees if I had any. I would want them to know that we're the best. So we want to raise the bar. And if we can help our advertisers, have a better image, I think we should do it, but it's darn risky. I mean, telling someone, if someone has a BO problem, and I'm not saying that relates to this, but, it's risky telling someone, listen, have you ever tried bathing? I mean, or deodorant or something like that. It's risky, because, it can destroy that friendship. But these guys took it pretty darn well. And I've talked to the CEO and, I've explained this to them, and somehow they slipped one of these commercials in again. But, Cathy, did you want to talk about lighting?
Well, Vince, can I Can I mention real quick the follow-up on the castor oil?
Absolutely.
I have been using castor oil in my eyes every night. And I remember I heard about this from another doctor that recommended it. And I believe it's true. I believe I can see better. And what I do is I take an old, you can use a glass dropper bottle too, but I take like a sterile eyedropper, like one that you got eye drops in, and I put the castor oil in there, and then I put it in my eyes every night. But I actually, once I get it in my eyes and rub it around, I put it on my eyelids and my eyelashes, because what they're saying is it absorbs through the skin, but it also helps with people that have dry eye. It helps to moisturize. And what I do is I have a eye mask, and it's kind of weighted a little bit. It's real soft. It's made by Earth Therapeutics. And I warm it up. That's really the only thing I use the microwave for. I warm it up in the microwave for about 30, 35 seconds, just so it's warm. And I lay that on my eyes, and that helps the oil to break up and absorb. And I think my eyes have done much better by doing it that way. But that's just, and Humco is the brand that Dr. Sheely recommends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe I have the same brand here. I can't see it from, or can't reach it from the microphone. But, Cathy, you know, we had a whole bunch of things we're going to talk about. We just can't seem to get through, can we?
One topic, Vince.
Yeah. Cathy, thank you for spending your time with our class today, time that you'll never be able to get back and reuse. And I really appreciate it. You're a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience. And I truly appreciate your friendship